Looks like we're live on YouTube as well.
Correct.
Okay, great. For those who would like to, now's the time for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It is January 24th and the time is 7:03 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella.
Here.
Trustee Harper. Trustee Uyghur.
Here.
Trustee Bierma.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here.
Everyone is in attendance.
Thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda is whether or not any staff or board have revisions to the agenda.
I do have a couple of revisions to the agenda tonight. They're more of additions than revisions, but upon your approval, I would like to add Dean Bosworth to present on the renderings of Kendall Deck and receive trustee feedback to move forward with the Kendall Deck remodel. And I would request that we add this to new business 4A. Would you like to have a consensus on that one, or do you want me to present the other one as well?
Sure, that sounds good to everybody. I think I saw everyone's thumbs up. Okay. Awesome,
And
thanks.
then I would like to move the memo that is in staff reports that John Seitz prepared on Kendall Community Center lift station rehabilitation to a formal agenda item. Recent quotes have been lower and he will be requesting a purchase. So moving it into the agenda would be necessary for a vote. And I would like to move this to new business 4C.
Using the numbers that were previously on the agenda, so in between the ordinance 2022-01 and consideration to approve the release of the RFP for an auditor.
Sure, we could put it there.
Okay.
I guess I had put it above there, but we could definitely put it below there.
Oh, so new 4C, got it. So above the consideration to adopt the ordinance, got it.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of moving everything down.
Sure thing. Any objections? Great. All right, any other revisions to the agenda from the board? Okay, so then we will now move to our opening public comment period. If you're on Zoom, which all of you are, please click the raise hand button and we will promote you to panelist. And you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. And if you could please introduce yourself at the beginning of your comment, we would appreciate it. And it does look like we have a hand raised.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
We can.
I'm not sure. I think I'm on the agenda. This is Dale Garland with the Hard Rock 100. I think I'm on the agenda later on, or do you want me to go in public comment?
So we actually have you as now the second item for our new business. And you're welcome to public comment as well, but you do have a formal agenda item.
Sure. I'll yield my time then.
All right, thank you, Dale. All right, I don't at this time see any other public comment. So we'll go ahead and close this opening public comment period and move on to the first for the next item on our agenda, which is new 4A, Dean Bosworth presenting on, or at least Dean Bosworth's PDF of the Kendall deck rendering.
Hey, Nathan, would you please, oh, he is here, okay.
Dean, I promoted you to panelist. If you would just accept, and you'll be pulled over.
And can we promote Todd as well?
Of course.
Thank you.
Gloria, do you think it'd be helpful for the public who didn't receive the PDF that we received to have you share your screen with that PDF while Dean presents?
Yes, and I'm going to give Todd that ability. Or actually, Todd, you know what? I think I can share mine. Does that work? Okay. Let me reclaim.
Dean, thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Can everyone see my screen with the renderings?
We can.
Yeah, and I don't know that you need to look at me during this. Can everyone hear me right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll just jump right into this. And then I'll entertain any questions and comments afterwards, if that's okay with everybody. First of all, I wanted to talk about general scope of what we're doing here. There are three major areas of concern and where we feel like we need to do some modifications and some additional construction. The first is outside the bathroom areas. There is an entry deck where the ADA ramp comes up, and you can see this on the drawings. There's a couple red arrows sort of pointing to that deck area where the bathrooms are. There is right now a stair to the upper deck in that area, and those are the exterior entrances to the bathrooms. The other area is the main deck, which is to the south, and that right now is one contiguous decked area and at one level. And the third area is on the west. I'd call it the west deck, which is out the gable end facing the west. Jumping right into those three areas, the bathroom entry deck, there's some issues with that area. The railing is failing. The ADA compliance is jeopardized due to the upper stair column locations. The stairs, the upper stairs to the upper mezzanine area are deteriorating, and there's a problem with maintenance and snow clearing and dangerous ice on them. There's also poor drainage under that deck against the building. There's sort of a rather good sized hole in there that I think probably drains a fairly widespread area against the foundation. And the decking itself was probably not an ADA compliant deck to start with, but it's also deteriorated to the point where it doesn't meet the standards as an ADA deck. So our solutions to that area include potentially, and this is something I want to comment on from the town, is potentially eliminating the stairs in the upper exiting to the mezzanine. And this can be accomplished from a code perspective by limiting the occupancy of that upper area, which probably never really gets used at a high occupancy anyway. And that would require posting it to less than, I think it was 50 feet. Michael McAllister, who is an architect I'm working with, has told me. We would eliminate that exitway in the upper deck instead of trying to rebuild it. The new entrance area, which is blue shaded there outside the bathrooms, I guess there's a lot of blue shading, would be a slab that's elevated. And in the process of elevating that slab, we'd repair the drainage around against the building and get some drainage away from the building. And we'd also do what we're proposing right now are concrete steps down to the ski platform. And those stairs are proposed to be such that when the snow builds up, they're just less stairs that you utilize, so they'd be wider stairs. And then we're proposing a potential roof structure over that area if the budget would allow it, or if that's a desire of the council and the town staff. There's still an issue with the ADA conformance with the ramp location as it goes around the building. And that issue is that the snow and ice, you can see sort of a diagonal dashed line that cuts through bathroom to the north bathroom. That valley dumps onto the railing, and there's a pretty good buildup of ice in that area. It's not the best case scenario, but we're still proposing at this stage that the ADA ramp and the ADA entrance to the building remains in this location, because there really aren't a lot of good locations for it. But I would suggest a possibility that that entire slab area outside the bathrooms and around the corner and all that area that needs to be reconstructed anyway, be reconstructed. The slab would include a snow melt system, which would help keep that ice from flowing back across the deck in that area. We're also looking at adding paved ADA parking, which is now the standard, where we have an ADA ramp terminating. We probably really should put something in the budget for an ADA parking space. We're looking at 2 parking spaces right now. We haven't done a full ADA study, but we think that's sufficient. The main patio area to the south, currently the deck structure is bordering on unsound, having deteriorated. And I'm sure if I crawled under and actually measured pieces, we'd find out that we don't really have capacity for the uses. The existing deck's sort of difficult to maintain. It's got a railing all around it. That railing is in bad shape. It's just one of those really difficult things to maintain. Right now, the corners of that deck are getting nailed from the other 2 valleys. That the one goes down to the north, or excuse me, the southeast, the other to the southwest. Both those valleys dump onto deck where they've destroyed railings. The new schematic that we're showing here is intended to create spaces that are outside that snowdrop area. And the other thing that occurs on that side of the building that's an issue is that the drainage is again against the building on the south edge, against where I show seating and stage areas on the new arrangement. Our solution is to do a 2-step deck system, one where you walk out underneath the overhang to the south, and you can see the double doors that are existing there. There'd be seating areas and a potential another seating area on the other side. There would be a potential stage area where equipment could be kept for bands and everything under the overhang. So it'd be, I call it a 3-season stage. That would be at the level of the floor. So there would be some handicap accessibility at that level and handicap seating. And then we would drop about approximately half the way to what we're calling the patio area. The patio area would be about a foot to 15 inches above existing grade. And that would also propose to be snow melted. This would be soft scaped on the south side with large steps on the east and west. And the reason for the soft scaping is to eliminate the railing and the potential maintenance issues with the railing. And it also keep the traffic from coming in, pedestrian traffic and ski traffic and all of that from coming right onto the deck from the south side, which is which would would allow better arrangements for patio furniture and so on. Right now we show it being rock. It could be some sort of other landscaping features. It could be partial decks. It could be some railings, but I'd like to avoid that. There's also, depending on the size, potential for a fire pit, though that might be best located somewhere else on grade. The main west deck is in a little bit better shape than the south deck as far as from a structural standpoint. The wraparound decks are history. I probably should toss that in. So we've got the decks separated with no walk around decks because they just can't handle the snow shedding. And I don't think they've ever been even brand new. I think they were problematic. The issues with the west deck is that the current railing though is compromised, or it's heading that way, and it's difficult to maintain that type of wooden deck railing, and they're not the most attractive thing. It also blocks the view. And it's difficult to clear the snow on that deck. So the deck is really used as a 3-season deck, probably more like a 1-season Silverton summer deck. Our solution to this is to do what I would call an infinity planter on that side, where you can see a cross section that Michael drew, where it's got a couple of a walking couple on a deck surface with a planter area below it. The scheme for that and the purpose for that would be that the snow would be able to be directly tossed over the edge into a planter. The planter would allow a zone that could eliminate the need for a rail on that side, and it would make maybe wedding photos and that sort of thing more appealing. And it also could reduce potential long-term maintenance issues of a railing. I probably should mention just other landscaping and drainage. We eliminated all the walk-around decks. So from one deck to the other would be down steps and cross softscaping, something that wouldn't be maintained in the wintertime, but would be a summer route, and that could be landscape. We show some theoretical landscaping around things. That would be on the south side. On the north side, the same thing. There would be entrances to those decks that would be softscaped instead of hard surfaces. One other goal is the north side drainage would drain to a drainage swale at the front of, the parking area, which would again keep moisture away from the foundation. There's poor drainage on that side. So we would be building up the grade essentially all around the building to get it a little bit above grade. That's a very brief and rapid synopsis here. So I guess I'd entertain any questions and comments at this time.
Trustees, any questions or comments? Oh, Sally, I see you have your hand
I
up.
have one, but yeah.
Oh, all right, go ahead, Sally.
I don't want to interrupt. I can't see everyone, so. Okay, a couple questions. Well, Dean, this is exciting. I think it is a real upgrade from what the current structural situation is over there right now. And just in terms of like how it's actually being used, this seems to really attune to what the way people actually use Kendall and in the space around it. And I think that's awesome. A couple of questions. One is, the ADA ramp was just poured, I think like last year or the year before. It's somewhat new. Is there any way for the current ADA ramp pour to be used in this design as it is, or does it get redone?
We are utilizing, can you hear, if you can hear this, if you can't hear this, let me know. The ADA ramp is, we're proposing using the ADA ramp as is. What's shown on the drawings is the location of the existing ramp.
Cool. Okay. And on those concrete stairs that come off of the ADA ramp, I think you mentioned that those are a little bit wider. I'm wondering kind of how wide. I'm thinking those are used with ski boots a lot. And so making those ski boot friendly. And it sounds like we're trying to get rid of railings, but I'm just seeing like a lot of kids and older people trying to walk up and down those stairs to access the bathrooms from the outside. I'm sure you've thought of it.
The code will require us to have, because of the length of those runs, we'll have to have an intermediate railing at some point.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. So, and we are intending that those are ski boot compatible, probably 4-inch rise and 15-inch runs. That detail has been worked out. Yes, that's the intention.
Okay, great. And then the Kendall Roof currently drops, I know, I think you've acknowledged this in the design, but I'm wondering about potential solutions on the other side of those stairs that go up to the bathrooms where there are a few bushes drawn. That roof drops kind of like dangerous amounts of snow. I've seen multiple kids nearly hit by roof flanges over there. I think currently it gets kind of roped off. The pile builds up and then it gets roped off. Is there something more than just bushes that can keep that area like low maintenance, but just a little bit safer so that if the pile starts to build up, we have a better solution than just fencing it off?
We could do permanent fencing in that area. Putting anything right underneath that snow falling would be an issue as far as just the structure of maintaining it.
Anything's gonna get hit there.
Yeah, so we could look at even doing, the landscaping could be more unfriendly landscaping. We could look at, I suppose we could look at some boulders and some things like that, but that would
It's
make
a really
difficult.
appealing play spot because that hill gets really high and then kids like to play on it and slide down it. And if we don't catch it in time.
So should we be looking at permanent fencing at that location? Out towards the front, the head of the ADA parking, and try to make that less of make that less accessible.
The ADA side has the same problem, but it's less appealing because it gets less sun. It's on the front of the building. But
are you talking about where we show the seating? The
right
upper
by the
seating
seating
on the south side?
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
I see. Yeah, I think
my
that,
concern is you have
maybe
Sorry,
that
go
needs to be some sort of a permanent, maybe some sort of permanent fencing, or maybe that area has to have, I hate to overuse landscape boulders, but maybe it does need some sort of a wall that wraps around that side. But I agree, that's taking out the railing at that location. I mean, this is a dangerous spot.
Yeah, and having it be so close to seating is just, even right now, there's no seating there and it's sort of a dead zone and it still gets a lot of activity. And Todd might have some good ideas too. I just know that would be looking at the renderings.
We're pulling that seating back from the corner from where it currently is by about 4 feet. So we're trying to bring the main deck area back some, and try to get some more snow shedding ability so it doesn't come back on the deck.
Yeah,
at that
it'll
point.
spread out.
But I think that's probably something that we could look at with some sort of, barricading systems are maybe the only solution to that, but maybe they can be an attractive barricading solution. Even a railing that continues along some sort of a more defined walkway from that area, and to try to keep that minimized.
I think that's
It's both sides of the building. It's the same issue. It's every one of these valleys. They're dangerous.
Yeah,
Right.
That's what my comments are. There's nothing different that happens on the front from our rendering to the right side. That gets so built up that you can't even see out the windows and it comes dangerously close to the windows. So is there a way for us to possibly improve the roof line in some way as well, to push it away from all of these areas a little bit more. I have no idea. I'm just trying to throw it out there. Sally touched on 90% of the points I was going to touch on.
Okay. Well, it wasn't in our scope to try to look at redoing those valley areas. I think that, I've looked at this building for 20 years and been frustrated by those big valleys on it. And unfortunately, it's just a function really of the design. And maybe we need to be coming up with ways to make those areas near there more attractive and those areas around there less attractive. But one point that I think I've heard here is maybe we also need to be able to clear those areas with equipment when needed, and not make it so too much vegetation in there creates an issue with clearing it.
Yeah, the solution isn't coming immediately to my mind, but I think it's just an area that needs some, I think both areas, both of those roof shedding zones, the ADA area and then the spot by the seating on the other shed, just need maybe if we can think of something for those spots.
Okay. At one point, we considered trying to find another handicap accessibility location, utilizing the existing ramp and then trying to do extend that deck area, the new deck area, the bathrooms further to the south and have an ADA entrance. There's a fireplace in that corner, which compromises all of that. Because I don't like that where the ADA goes around the building. It's a maintenance issue, but we're sort of stuck with the geometry that the solutions are pretty difficult in dealing with the winter issues. And I'm afraid it becomes one of those things that just requires keeping track of it, which is why we're considering snow melt in those areas. The other option we looked at, Sally, you brought this up with the existing ADA ramp, was a different ramp location, but that's throwing resource away, I'm afraid, because we do have a ramp that's the ramp itself's usable. I mean, it's in good shape.
Yeah, and it accesses the bathrooms really well.
Yeah.
In front of the building.
So one question that I had just to toss out there that comes up when conversations I've had with Michael is, what we've shown you are sizes that are pretty consistent with the current sizes that are out there. And this is our opportunity to increase sizes of any of those patio areas. And that's something that we should have on the table, is whether that needs to be considered in this, because now's the time to do it if we feel like we want to have, a little bit more capacity.
Molly?
At what point does expanding and possibly looking at a different roof line coincide with what we're talking about for the planning documents that we're looking at, and not moving ahead with everything and trying to make this all one cohesive plan?
So I understand the question you're asking about the potential for redoing a new geometry with the roof structure. I think that the actual geometry of the roof structure is going to be something that's going to be very difficult to modify, just the way that structure is constructed. With cross gables, they're notoriously difficult to remodel into anything else. There are potential ways to flatten out the valleys, but I don't think with that 12-12 pitch roof that we're going to accommodate what we would try. One potential idea would be a different roofing material and some sort of snow melted roof system, but those are not without problems when you're dealing with this tight of a pitch, with as steep of a pitch. My reaction to this is that we should try to accommodate those areas a little bit better than we have right now with the new structures that we put there. In other words, we build outside those zones. But I'm not sure we can solve that issue very easily. And we're talking about a pretty, it's pretty major. Yeah.
So I like where you went with that. So instead of looking at the roof structure, with the exception of the ADA corner, how hard is it to bump this rendering over, right? Move it away from that direct corner, so that way you can keep the seating and the stage and the patio, and you just shift it further down the line. And then way the edge over the stage could shed directly off. Is that what you're saying?
I think that was our intention. The rendering isn't, I wouldn't say it's 100% accurate with those sort of elements. I tossed this out to the architect to come up with space planning, and we do need to address some of those operational issues, like that stage location that you just mentioned. That really should be, we really shouldn't have it the way it's represented on this sketch.
Okay. Yeah, because that's going to be the same exact issue where the snow is just going to
we
fall right
need
into
to
that
pull
area.
that area off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I like the ideas. I think it's great using the existing ramp. I love the additional stairs on that, the side toward the ski lift. I mean, but do we want to make it bigger? Do we want to make the scope of it a little bit different? Can we utilize more of the square footage around the building to expand to what we see the potential of this building to be?
Just so I have a sense of scale for what it is now, in the patio area, is that like, could that accommodate a medium-sized wedding tent? Like, could you tent that for a wedding?
The patio area?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's sort of a loaded question.
I'm trying to see
I
how
guess it
weddings
depends.
work over there.
Yeah, it does. Is that something that someone would do potentially, is put a tent at that location, or would it be better to look at potentially at having a flat area on the ground, the softscape somewhere near there that would accommodate a tent?
Yeah, I think
So
we would.
that-
Well, I personally did put a tent on that porch for our wedding, and it was awesome. And we had a band out there on the current deck, and it was great just because of the access to the interior space, not being like so far out in the darkness and traveling in. But there are a lot of weddings that happen in that space at Kendall, so I'm just trying to make sure that in rearranging that, and especially with the use of that deck, that particular patio area, I think it's pretty heavily used during weddings. Yeah, I see Todd has a idea here.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to build on that. I think that's a great consideration to make. If that's something we're considering, my recommendation would be maybe we consider putting anchors built into the patio itself or poured into the concrete. Typically, when you're trying to put a tent up like that, you're either tying it to a railing, or with wedding tents, you're putting like 18-inch spikes in the ground. So if that was a consideration the trustees wanted to look at, we could probably almost get an in-house tent that we know is going to fit and that we know could be anchored to the patio itself with little eye bolts or whatever, something along those lines. But I am supportive of that idea. I do think that kind of gives us the option to really utilize that space in the winter as well.
I think we just need to know how large you'd like that tent to be and accommodate that on the patio side. We could look at doing whatever those sizes come in, 20 by, if we're looking at something as large as 20 by 40, then we probably need to bump the patio up above a little bit bigger than what we show, but we're just really showing that as a stylistic version of what's there on that lower patio. we can make that pretty much as large as you want to make it.
I would support making that patio a place that could accommodate tenting, or if not there, if there's a better place for that, I would be open to that. But I think really thinking through kind of how a wedding event for 150 people or 200 people maybe would work over there.
All right, I think that's something that we'll look into.
Tyler, did you have a comment earlier?
Yeah, so I love the idea, and especially having the patio ground level. I think that might save us on some maintenance. My question was, what's your experience on having like putting patios like this outside of buildings up here, and how long, what could we expect the life expectancy of something like this to be? I mean, I feel the same way as you about the wood deck. When we saw it going up, I was like, oh man, that roof's gonna shed right onto it. But I don't know. Do you have any ideas, or do you have a lot of experience in these? And can you tell us maybe how long something like this could last?
Well, of course, that's another one of those loaded questions. And that depends somewhat on maintenance and snow melt. If you use any salt on a slab like that, you can destroy something in 10 years. If we design for the exposures that we should be designing for, and then we use the right strength concrete and the right air ratios and so on, and we keep track of the placement, we have good drainage on the deck, we should expect a patio like that to last, we've seen structures similar to this go 30, 35 years. We're talking about a fairly robust construction. And again, if we do a good job with it, we can possibly extend the lifespan beyond that. But that all comes down to the somewhat maintenance. There are a lot of factors, but we're keeping the drainage off of it. We do have a lot of freeze thaw cycles. Snow melt definitely helps, which I think really should be considered here.
Yeah,
especially on that patio.
Idea. That would definitely help keep it clear, and keep it ice free also, hopefully. But all right, well, thank you. And then the only other quick comment was, as far as Todd, I know you mentioned some anchors, permanent anchors. The one thing we might have to just consider is if they're a tripping hazard, or if they're out there and they're year round, they need to be marked, or I'm sure there's something to get around that. But anyway, thank you.
I've done anchors before in slabs like this, that we have cover plates over them, and the anchors are actually in the inset.
Oh, that was exactly what I was going to say. You can actually hide them.
I've got a quick, I don't know, thought more than a question, but kind of taking a step back to something Molly, I think, was hinting at in the first set of comments she made. To what extent are we being forward thinking in this scope of updates? And are we preventing any further additions that are going to be inefficient to do after we do this? For example, if we wanted to plumb in propane fire places, fire circles outside that were part of the patio or somewhere nearby, and add additional seating areas with picnic tables, or make other improvements for drainage or grading to the parking lot, are those things that, for example, if we improve the ice skating rink and it draws more traffic, are those things that are inefficient to do afterwards that need to be incorporated into something like this? Or is this being done in a way where we'll be able to continue to iterate as we work on, like, the RFS that's just went out, and other things like that?
Yeah,
Well,
that was what I
sure.
was commenting on, Shane.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly.
And certainly every time we add on outside a structure, we take away an opportunity to do something else at that location. So, at this building, if we're talking about structural additions potentially to this building, there are only the same locations where we're putting access into the buildings, where we have the gables. Really, those are the only areas that make sense to add on. So if we needed additional size to the buildings, we'd be looking at extending, one of the gables, the gable towards the ski area or the ski lift. With the current lift arrangement, I would say I was trying to keep that, what I felt was a comfortable distance for ski traffic right now around that base. I don't think that you'd want to expand into that area with anything much further than the current extents of what I show. But certainly there's expansion potential to the west, and there's expansion potential on the building towards the south, although you start to get into the zone where you're starting to push against the hillside and you're starting to push against the access from the base of those potential runs, or those runs that are there, or potential runs that we might want to, that's one of our concerns with extending that patio too far. But to answer your question directly, about the only one of those items that we're really accommodating in this, honestly, is that we're taking care of the drainage around this structure so that parking area doesn't drain into the building, and that we get some of the drainage from the base of the ski area to go around the front of the building and around the back of the building rather than into the building, which are two goals right now. But once we get out of the zone of this project area, I haven't really been looking how that would be affected by future expansion.
Thank you. And then I have another quick question, or another question for Todd, which is, how much have you focused on the use cases of this property, kind of the direction Sally was going? If the primary use of the building today is service, providing infrastructure and support for the ski area operation, and then in the summer it's a significant revenue driver for the town as an event venue, are these additions and the scope of these additions ideal for those uses? And do we have any intended future uses that maybe could be incorporated into this plan? And then I know this is a very big compound question, but adding on to it, is the stage area intended to be like another music venue style stage area? And if so, do we need another venue that's similar in size to Columbine Park, or should this be thought about a little bit more to say, could the stage area be elsewhere in the building where it projects out to a larger potential audience space so that you could have a significantly larger venue than what we have in Columbine Park?
Those are all great questions. I think in regard to the stage itself, it was intended more of like a wedding band kind of setup, as opposed to major, hosting a large show that's open to the public. I think it was kind of labeled as a stage, particularly because that's where the electrical access would be, things like that. If we were to put it kind of at the far end of the patio, we'd have to do those runs through conduit to get all that stuff out there. So I think that's why it's reflected in its current location. To answer the kind of the larger scope question, our main drivers were accommodating skiers and accommodating weddings and event use. So a lot of that consideration did go into this current design. But I think you raised a lot of great points, and that's why we really see a lot of benefit in these periodic check-ins with the board. Bill and I tried to anticipate as many uses as possible. Part of knowing what the use of this building is going to be over the next decade or more is going through that planning process that we're kind of just entering into with the RFS. So the more feedback, the better. The more preliminary planning we can do and kind of anticipate all these things that we've been discussing so far tonight, the better the plan is going to be. So this is all part of the process, the way I look at it. And like I said, the more feedback, the better, and the more we can kind of incorporate stuff that's going to be really functional for us. So I would encourage both public and trustee comments so that we can get this right before we start the process.
Awesome. Thank you. Something that this brought to mind that I think would be super cool from my perspective, but I'd prefer to know what the community thinks about it before encouraging further development of the idea, is the stage on the south, or the deck on the south end of the building that faces the Beaver Pond fields, has always looked like a pretty ideal larger venue space to me, where you could actually set up a larger stage and have a larger audience space. But I don't know what detractors that also creates, or what complications that creates. But it seems like a cool opportunity from my perspective, but I'd be really curious to know what the community thinks about that.
I mean, my first reaction to that is having that kind of infinity deck space. You're not going to have the obstruction of a railing. So if there were to be people out in that field looking at the deck off of the ballroom, it would kind of seem more like a stage, kind of multi-use. Typically, when you start thinking in terms of concerts, you need to start thinking power and sound runs and stuff like that. So again, if that's something the trustees are interested in pursuing, I would encourage us to design in those kind of accommodations into the deck itself. XLR cables, microphone cables, ample power supply, breakers, things like that. A lot of that service is currently off of the building. There's always benefit in putting that stuff into the surface of the deck or the patio itself, so that you don't have these long cable runs from the building to wherever you're trying to get speakers or microphones, etc.
One thing that Michael and I did discuss was that west deck as a stage. We looked at site planning issues that had pavilions out towards the ski area and so on, but those became, I thought, hazards to skiers coming off the mountains, which moved the potential pavilion location over more towards the Hard Rock field, which is a possible location for, a band pavilion. But it could also be incorporated into that west deck. We are actually proposing right now that west deck is about 5 feet bigger. You can see a lightly dashed line. That's the current deck size. And we were thinking that needed to be pulled out some. It's 22 feet right now, which is a really awkward dimension for use. But that, when you look at the grand scheme of this project, increasing that by another 5 feet is not a huge budget deal, because most of the infrastructure and the stairs and everything, it doesn't really affect that. So if that's something we should be considering, I think that should be added to the scope.
And I'm not sure if we should encourage that or not. It's more of a question for the community to give us feedback, to say like they would like to see that direction from the trustees. And the same goes for like the plumbed fire pits and other things that I was talking about. Does the community want us to go that direction, or do they want us to just focus on solving the drainage issues and safety concerns related to the deck? And I see Molly has her hand up.
Well, for some reason I kept cutting out and I missed a lot of what was said previously. I did catch a little bit about what Todd was touching on. And he's 100% right. That building has absolutely no sound wired into it. So if this is going to be done, that needs to be taken into consideration for stage, how far it should be. Because there's no sound equipment in that building right now whatsoever. It's very difficult to set anything up. And I like the extended deck idea to pull it out further. I'm just worried because that's an elevated deck, correct? I'm just worried that you couldn't expand the building because it's an elevated deck if you decided to add on to that south direct, or that, which direction would that be? To the right side of the rendering.
Yeah, whatever we do out there is going to prevent adding on to the building in that direction, or it's going to have to be taken apart. So that's if that's a potential, we could look at phasing this project, and we may need to anyway, in dealing with looking at the accessibility to the bathrooms and those issues with the, those structural and operational issues around those bathrooms. The same thing with the main deck, and we could look at those as being the phase one, and the west deck could be looked at as a phase two or down the road addition.
Sally?
I think I really like the idea of taking into consideration sort of some visionary moves that we can make with the building. My only concern as we head down that pathway is that, kind of like Dean's already brought up, the building has some just geometric limitations as it is. And if we start looking at it as a space for bigger and bigger venues, the bathrooms are they're really small. Like nothing about the building accommodates a bigger audience as it is. So there's no commercial kitchen, there's no wiring, there are 3 stalls in the bathrooms. I don't know what the men's look like, but they're just this. I think what I like about this rendering is it fits with the scale of the building that's already there. That does come with some limitations that I think if we started to push out on, we might discover that it creates potentially just more problems, whereas it might make sense to sort of go through the public process of envisioning a design for, like we're looking at for the master planning of Kendall, and think through those ahead of the building process rather than retroactively trying to make this building work for our visionary needs. And then one other thought that just occurred to me as we were talking about that west deck is, since we're here and we're at it, kind of this is more of just an aesthetic comment, I guess. And it's just always kind of bugged me that the front of the building at Kendall isn't, I don't know, it's just not that enticing. And we don't have a lot to do over there structurally. I don't think there are like major problems with it. But the dumpster often sits sort of where that couple is standing in the side view there. And it just there's no landscaping currently that I'm aware of. And it's not such a big deal in the winter, but I do think as a wedding venue or like more of a summer space, I don't know if we want to just finish the 360 degrees on the building and go all the way back around the west deck and then back to the front and think about maybe a better spot for the dumpster and what we might be able to do with that entrance. The entrance itself, I think, works. It's just that kind of weird space under the roof where the bushes are drawn and the couple is standing. It's functional, but it's just not that pretty.
Thank you, Sally. So we've been batting this around for almost an hour. It sounds like there's a bunch of really good thoughts going on. Gloria, what do you think about the next iteration of this being like a public work session with a community comment component, so that we can make sure we get all the different perspectives before Dean spends too much more time adjusting?
A strategy there on how to show this to the community and get feedback. But I do think it's definitely, at least next meeting, having a public comment specifically on this topic. Unless you would like a work session, we can schedule that as well. But definitely getting that feedback.
I defer to the board. I just want to be cognizant of the amount of time we're taking.
Yes.
With some additional attendees waiting to present.
Yeah, so maybe what we can do as staff and with Dean is go over some of these comments, perhaps do maybe another rendering. It doesn't seem like very much can change out of this one based on the comments, but then presenting that to the public on social media and on the website and kind of pushing that out to show that we're asking for public comment at our next meeting. Would that work for everyone?
Sounds awesome.
Okay, great.
And maybe a
Any other-
little notice
yeah.
over at Kendall.
Yeah, we could put it up at Kendall too.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing, I really like the idea of maybe doing it in phases as well, because I do like forward thinking quite a bit and making sure that we incorporate everything, but also in the meantime, the deck isn't usable. So, you know, we maybe don't want it to snowball too much, so we can actually get some work done and get some of it usable. And if it comes in phases, like you said, that might be a good idea. But.
Great,
Awesome.
we have our marching orders.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any last notes from Jim, Jordan, or Jess before we thank Dean and let him have the rest of his evening back? Jim? Oh, I can't at least hear what you're saying.
Thank you, sir. No, I love the presentation. I thought it was great. What I would like to see the next round we have this call.
It sounds like there's about a
I would
15,
just
20
like
second
next round to be
delay.
more technical.
I heard that he wanted more technical.
Did Jim put it in the chat? Oh, got it.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
All good, it came through. Thanks, Jim.
Got it.
All right. Well, Dean, thank you very much. Any other questions for us before we move on?
No, I think we'll go through these comments and do another iteration.
Great. Well, this is awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. So with our adjusted agenda, the next item tonight is the debrief for the Hard Rock 100. So if we could bring Dale back over.
Promoting to panelist.
Thank you, Nathan. Gloria, is there anything you'd like to preface the conversation with, or how do you like to kick this one off?
And we're so happy to have Dale here to do a little debrief with you all. And I just wanted to let you all know that we are in works with the contract. It is with Clayton right now, and we will be getting it over there. But we thought maybe actually having this debrief might be a good time to have the contract kind of in flux, because we might have stuff to add to it over this meeting. So Dale, take it away.
All right, thanks, Gloria. Hold on, everybody. Hi, everybody. There we go. Yeah, what I'd like to do is just kind of give you an update and follow up on a report that I sent to you, a report I sent to the municipalities, an economic report primarily, but then as Nathan and I have talked, and Gloria has been part of this as well, the idea of the contract, and maybe we do want to talk about that a little bit, but Hard Rock and Silverton, you know, I think you've heard me say this before, are synonymous now. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and 2021 was certainly a banner year for that. You know, after 2 years off, I was a little worried as the event coordinator that, you know, we might lose some of our momentum and that kind of thing, but none of that happened. We had a very successful year, both organizationally as well as competitively. So just a couple of highlights. You know, we had a really fair number. Well, we only had a couple of people who were, because of COVID, were able to come from outside the United States, but one of them ran faster than anybody's ever run this course before. And he took an hour off of Killian Journet's record, which is not a soft record. And then Sabrina Stanley, who is now a Silverton resident, was the female winner. And she just missed the course record by 3 minutes. And so we're really proud of that. But a couple other things that are kind of highlights, you know, kind of again, organizational highlights, running highlights. We did have our first 25-time finisher, a guy from Fruita, Colorado. If you multiply 25 years times the amount of running up and down the San Juans that Hard Rock Runner does, it comes to about 1.6 million vertical feet. So that was kind of a pretty cool thing for Kirk to be able to accomplish. We did have a guy who finished his 10th Hard Rock at the ripe young age, I guess, of 70 years old. And so he's from San Diego, comes out every year, does a really fantastic job, is very supportive of our event. The community itself got really high marks. Every year we send out a runner survey, and part of it is about, what are your community impressions? How much money did you spend? What can we do better? That kind of thing. We give a score of 1 to 5, and consistently the community friendliness, the helpfulness, the perceived value of costs and goods, all are at 1. Well, this year was 1.01 on a scale of 1 to 5. So what that tells me, again, as a coordinator, is that the town of Silverton is treats Hard Rock runners very well, and it's reciprocated back to the town. So it's been a really good year. We estimate this year was about a $425,000 economic infusion into the Silverton economy, based on the number of runners and the number of crew that came in. Our runners, we estimate, spend about $1,600 every year for their stay in the San Juans. So I guess kind of moving forward, just a couple of things, and if you want to talk about the contract and things like that, one of the things that we worked on this year is how can we brand and how can we leverage the Hard Rock, all the good things that we've done to get to this point. How can we make it go to that next level? And that really is around our philanthropy. And we identified as an organization 3 philanthropic kind of silos or things that we want to work on. One is around trail etiquette and trail awareness. As more and more people find the San Juans and go off into the San Juans, we want to be seen as somebody who's kind of helping with the trail education, the trail etiquette, and then also gender equity, and then also our ongoing commitment to education. So I just want to highlight those a little bit. I did send Nathan, I think I sent the link. We were able to leverage a pretty good video with Ultra and San Juan Mountains Association. It's year 1 of a 3 or 4 year program about what does it mean to be a good trail user in the San Juans. And that will continue to work with our corporate partner Ultra Shoes on that, as well as San Juan Mountains Association. In terms of gender equity, 2 things. One, our board made a commitment this year to have the percentage of women applicants and the percentage of women starters be equal. So we had 18% of our applicants were women, and so consequently 18% of our starters will be women. We're also working with another one of our corporate partners, the North Face, to bring a women's running camp to Silverton and to the San Juans and try to get more women comfortable. Our research has said, safety is a huge issue. Time is a huge issue for a lot of women, but Hard Rock still is daunting to a lot of people, and we're trying to build a bigger, stronger community of women that support Hard Rock. And then finally, our education, we continue to try to help the students of the San Juan, the four towns that we run through, Telluride, Lake City, Ouray, and Silverton. We're part of a $36,000 of scholarship money that we were able to pass on to Silverton and other San Juan students. We've now gone over the $200,000 mark in terms of our scholarship commitment to education in the San Juans. Couple of things that we're working on. We've become kind of a more popular event, and with that brings both some really positive things and also some issues. And so one of the issues that was brought to light this year was on-street parking. And so we are working with town staff, as well as Nathan. And I know, Mr. Mayor, we've talked, I think, a little bit about it, we've actually rented, I really enjoyed that conversation of Kendall, because we've rented Kendall for 3 or 4 days, and we'll actually have a Camp Hard Rock there, and a place for our volunteers and our runners to actually camp. And we're working on all those details right now, but that's tried to mitigate some of the issues that we saw with especially sprinter vans and things like that, and dispersed camping, and maybe getting them all together and making it a little bit less of an enforcement issue. And we're, again, working with staff and Sheriff Conrad on that. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? I know we want to talk about the contract, so I'll wait on that. But the other thing we've noticed is that Hard Rock is now, more Hard Rock people who are associated with Hard Rock are calling Silverton home. And we've seen Sabrina Stanley and Avery Collins. We've seen Megan Hicks and Brian Powell. We've seen even our board president, Doug Hart, has bought a piece of land in Silverton. And so some of those, not just the transitory financial commitment, but actually becoming part of the community, is becoming more and more part of the Hard Rock commitment and the Hard Rock brand with Silverton. This year we had over 1,900 applications for 145 spots. We did have our lottery. For the first time, we had a lottery that was actually electronic, instead of cutting up thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets and literally drawing them out of a jar. We actually wrote a program for it. We did have, as I said, over 1,900 people apply for our 143 spots. And so that went really successfully, and we're anticipating this year a very, at least from a competitive perspective, very competitive event. 3 of the top 5 males in the world are coming, and 2 of the top 5 females in the world are coming. And so we're anticipating not only a very competitive event, but that will bring along, some other things in terms of more media interest, some more logistical things that we're dealing with our organization. So that's kind of my report. I know we want to leave some time for the contract, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about that now, or if we want to wait until, your legal, Clayton has looked at it, and then I can get it to my board so we can look at it, or we want to talk about it now.
Do you want me to go, Shane? I saw we
go ahead,
unmuted
Gloria.
at the same time.
We did. I don't. All you.
So I would just suggest in this case that we have Clayton look over the contract, take it to your board, Dale, with any of your amendments, and then we'll finish with our board here, and if that works for you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the commitment, and kudos to Nathan for kind of shepherding this with me. And we appreciate us being able to be kind of the guinea pig or the canary in the coal mine, or whatever other image you want to conjure up with that, in terms of being the template to kind of make it a more streamlined process. And I look forward to making that happen, and working through that process with Nathan and the town staff to make that work. Because I think it'll definitely benefit us, but I think it'll also, in terms of a town, I think it'll make it a lot easier for events to come in and make sure all the T's are, crossed and the I's are dotted in terms of the permitting.
And I would just like to jump in and say it's been a pleasure working with this event, especially Dell. He is a wonderful organizer to work with, and I'm super excited to finally get this process in place so we can have contracts for future events that do come through that have a historic and established run here in Silverton. That's going to ensure that the board, the event organizers, and town staff don't have to spend countless hours verifying each and every document. We will just narrow it down to a yearly operational plan update and debriefing. So I think that's going to help in the long run as Silverton and special events move forward. So thank you, Dale.
You bet, Nathan. I'm happy to be part of the process. Any other questions? Sorry, I couldn't get you all into Hard Rock this year, so I guess you're gonna have to be spectators again this year. sorry. But yeah, Mr. Trustee Harper, I can see you're really disappointed. So anyway, we look forward to it. Again, it's the 16th through the 18th of July, and I'll continue to work with town staff and Sheriff Conrad on some of these issues that we've identified. And I look forward to seeing you all in July, if not before.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dale. The Hard
Okay.
Rock's definitely an awesome event for the community. So we
Yeah.
really appreciate you
Right.
putting in all this effort with your team and making it happen.
Sure. I don't, one last thing, usually when I do this, I don't know if there's got to be some kind of a, I mean, and I would leave it to the trustees to decide. You will obviously be named as an additional insured. I don't know if there's any other kind of things, recognition or approvals, or if the contract that Nathan and I are going to work on constitutes the town's approval for this event, or if we need to do anything like that.
And we did lay that out in the contract. So when you get that, we'll be able to
Okay.
kind of go through that with you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay. All right. Okay, everybody, well, have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Dale.
Okay, see you guys. Thank you.
All right. My scratches are a little confusing. Gloria, what did we end up with as the third item in new business?
Sure. So our third item for the new business will be the Kendall Community Center Lift Station Rehabilitation Memo that is found.
Got it.
If you're looking in the packet, it's in the staff reports. And John Sykes needed some direction from you all. So let me promote him right now. All right, John. Here you are.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, John.
As some of you may know, and you definitely know if you had a chance to read the memo, the Kendall Mountain Community Center has a wastewater lift station that carries the waste across the river to a manhole. As you can imagine, it's not a very good situation when that breaks. As far as I know, that lift station's been operating flawlessly since it was installed, it's definitely older than Kendall. So I would say sometime in the 90s. We were able to get, it's a dual pump station. We were able to get one of the pumps running again as a Band-Aid to kind of get us through this winter. And it took about a week of time with 3 crew. Every day we had to go in and pump down the lift station. It's about 16 feet deep, so that we could get in there and work on it. Essentially, the plumbing froze and broke. The pumps continued to operate, but it's difficult to get the plumbing from the pumps to the piping that goes across the river. It's a complicated repair, and it's going to be more complicated when we go to rehabilitate this lift station. Essentially, we need warm temperatures. So it's not something that I think we could do in winter unless we want to close down Kendall for the winter, because we need an operable fire hydrant. And we run a lot of water in Kendall to keep that main from freezing. As you know, last year it froze anyway. So it's kind of a critical lift station, not only for the community center wastewater, but also to keep water running, to keep the pipes from freezing, and to have an operable fire hydrant over there. What I'm proposing is that we replace the pumps and the plumbing in kind, essentially with the same quality pumps that we're going to take out of it. The price that I got back this morning was a little bit less than what I had in my memo. And I think we can do the entire project for around $17,000. That's 2 pumps, a new control panel, and all the plumbing required to rehabilitate the lift station. Pretty much the only thing that's going to be original there is the concrete vault that the wastewater transfers in. And so what I'm essentially asking you is permission to go ahead and move forward with this purchase. The pumps are going to be about 2 months out. And I don't think that we would be ready to do the rehabilitation within 2 months anyway, but I'd like to have everything on hand so that we can work on this lift station as soon as we get a break in the action and good weather over at Kendall. Let's see, was there anything I wanted to touch on? Do y'all have any questions or comments?
Does the sewer fund have sufficient capital to cover this?
It does right now. It kind of depends on what else comes down the pike. I would consider this a very critical repair unless you just want to abandon Kendall. Even if we go out of budget, I really don't think it's an option for our community. But that's your prerogative to decide.
Yeah, so,
Tyler?
I mean, if we, like you just said, if we need this to continue to keep Kendall running, then I think we need to go ahead and spend the money. That's my 2 cents. I mean, it's too much of an asset for the community not to have fully functional. And we're talking about putting in a new patio and things like that. Well, all of that's moot if we don't have the lift station, if that's what I'm hearing from you, John.
Correct.
Sally?
I was gonna say kind of what Tyler said too. I would, if we have the funds in the sewer fund, and that doesn't put another priority in the community in jeopardy, then I think keeping Kendall open and being able to pump the wastewater is a priority.
Any other trustee thoughts or questions? Does everybody support this request? Do we need a formal vote for this level of spend? Okay. Would a trustee like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a
I'll make-
motion for the emergency $17,000 to be spent for the lift station at Kendall.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
trustee Harper, trustee Weir,
We'll note a visual yes from trustee Harper just for the record.
trustee Uyghur,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes,
That's unanimous across the board.
thank you. Thank you, John. All right, Gloria, anything else on that before we move on?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda tonight is consideration to adopt ordinance 2022-01, an emergency ordinance of the town of Silverton for the preservation of health, peace, and safety to provide for the administrative modification of liquor licensed premises and the issuance of encroachment permits to facilitate outdoor dining within the town's right of way.
So at the Office of Emergency Management team meeting that we have every Fridays right now since the pandemic has reared up again, the town was asked to investigate options to encourage outdoor dining for the events coming up in February. So this is basically an amended version of the 2021-01 emergency ordinance. But the amendments would be, the changes would be that this would accommodate for possible red alerts from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. window to have the barricades out. And then we would be asking the businesses to remove those barricades from 12 a.m. to 10 a.m. in anticipation of snow removal and to ensure that those barricades aren't frozen to the ground. So.
Thank you. Trustees, questions, comments?
I'll go.
Great.
So we looked for when it came up, and we decided with the previous board to call it good at, well, I'm saying when Austin was on is what I should say, to not let it go past the 31st because of snow removal. And you're looking at freezing temperatures, you're looking at potentially having all of the barricades frozen into the ground. And at that time, and I'm still believing this, it's not a feasible way to move forward in the winter. And they're metal barricades. It's very, very cold. I mean, on warm, sunny days, yeah, everybody would love it. But I don't see it being that feasible because we don't have the magic ball that tells us exactly when the snow is coming and how much we're going to get. And if we got hit with another storm like what we had like 10 days worth, and it got stuck in the middle of the street and everything didn't get moved out of the way, you're looking at bigger issues. So I'm still not for this idea in the wintertime.
Thank you, Molly. Tyler?
Yeah, and I agree with Molly when it comes to the weather being an issue. A concern that we have is we have a bunch of events coming up in February, and I'm not sure that the restaurants that we currently have open have the capacity to handle what we could see in the volume of people coming up. And this could be one way to maybe, you know, increase the volume or the amount of people we could serve. It would be I think it could be harmful to the town's reputation if we do have these big events and they're going pretty well, but then, you know, we couldn't feed everybody, or there wouldn't be, you know, room for everybody to get something to eat or drink. So as long as the town crew, like John Seitz, is on board with the way that the updated ordinance is written, I would lean towards supporting it, just to hopefully be able to serve as many of the people that come to town as possible.
Thank you, Tyler. John, what are your thoughts?
As long as they can move the apparatus and make sure that they're not in the way. Obviously, plowing is pretty critical, and even small things make a big difference. But if the proprietors of these restaurants can, and other businesses that wanted to use this, I guess, if they can handle getting them moved and taking care of them, I think it would be great for capacity if we get big crowds here. Be good for business, be good for sales tax. Those are my thoughts. I'm really just concerned that they get it done. If they can't get them moved, then I guess we can move them and revoke the privilege. But I would like to make sure that the wording is I think the wording is there for that.
Sally?
I guess that was my question. So to clarify, this is optional. This is not a requirement for businesses, right? So if a business opts in to increase their capacity, I think there are a lot of benefits to that, certainly from the business standpoint and for community health, just since we'll have a lot of people from outside the community coming in. And my question, maybe it's for John or maybe it's for the sheriff, would just be on enforcement. So like if there were repeat offenders or if it just wasn't working, that we have something in place to not kind of gum up the public works program.
I guess they could be fined just like people that don't move their vehicles. But I'm stepping out of my zone there a little bit.
I wonder if, just like you said, you know, if you don't put the stuff away, then can we revoke the privilege for that particular business? Or if it's after one offense, or if it's after two or three, that's where I guess it would become sort of I wouldn't be sure about how to go about that.
Has Sheriff Conrad been part of this discussion at all?
He has not.
I'm more concerned about the ice shelf that's level with the street right now. So you don't step off of a curb, you step directly onto a flat ice shelf. So if you had barricades that were in there and it was a melty day and you had to get those out of there and they're frozen into the ground, I'm just thinking from a practical standpoint, how are you going to get in there and move them unless you have equipment? So a lot of these places don't, I mean, how many people are open? 4, 5? So yeah, I didn't find it feasible before. We voted it down before. That's why we put a time limit on it. I don't find it feasible now. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing. Maybe for the month of February, maybe if we don't give anybody tickets and we just say, hey, we can drop off barricades and you can do it over ski joring weekend or over whiteout weekend or whatever, then you're doing a service for the events. But to have them out there constantly, we're actually opening up a can of worms, getting them up and out of the gutters every time they freeze solid into the ground. I just find it to be, as an ordinance, extending it more problems than it's worth. If we're going to say we just want to do it for the events coming up, then you're talking specifically about a short time frame and a short window.
And Molly, I think this does address those events. It is only Friday through Sunday. And then if you look at section C, 1, 2, 3, section C3, if barriers are left out during this time, the extended permit will be revoked. So that was kind of addressing another one of your all's concerns.
Yeah, but you're revoking it for what? For just the winter usage or the year-round usage? So is this going to be something that we're doing in perpetuity? As I said, there's so many, it's such an open-ended thing right now. You're revoking it for what? For winter? Well, so you're going to say that if it's snowing really hard, town staff is going to have time to come by and drop off the barricades needed. And then we're supposed to put them, I'm talking right now from a perspective of a restaurant owner. I'm supposed to bring them onto the sidewalk. Or where am I going to put them to get them off of the street for a red alert? Because not only do the plows run in the street, they also run on the sidewalk in these locations and they clear the sidewalks. So I just want to see what it is we're talking about. And if you're talking about stop fining a business and removing their privileges, what, you want me to put them inside my business to take away additional seating? So just explain that part of it to me, because I don't have a courtyard, and neither does the Avalanche. I could see the Eureka Station, if they were able to, putting them into the park, but then again, they're putting them onto town property then. So show me how this is really going to work and how it's feasible. Because if it's that busy or town staff is that slow that they can come by and drop off barricades and then pick them back up and then bring them back, I just think we're losing something here.
And in my memo, I did say, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I wasn't sure if you were going to respond directly to Molly's points now or if it was.
Oh, yeah, I can listen to the whole thing and then respond.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Oh, just that in the memo, we did specify that town staff has offered to help in the retrieval and setup of barricades as capacity allows. But business using this option should be prepared to pick up and set up their own barricade. And then as far as taking away the barricades, we did plan for them to go into the establishment during the hours of 12 a.m. to 10 p.m. or during the hours of 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., right? Is that what we said? Yes, thank you.
Jordan?
I was just going to kind of reiterate that it's optional, and if it seems like too much work for your business or whoever's business, then they don't have to do it. And I think just leave good open area for if a business wants to do this and put in the hard work of moving the barriers and moving them back. It gives them the option to expand their capacity when it might be kind of a good time when we need it during events. So
And Jim had a comment in the chat that asked how many businesses opted in, and just Austin Lashley had approached me about this as well. So after our team meeting, that's the only one I've heard from.
And I would also just reiterate, and I think Molly, you raised a good point that I'm not sure that this should be more of an emergency ordinance, because like I said, I look at the calendar for February, and we have something every weekend. We've got the bank slalom now, we've got the whiteout, we've got ski touring, of course, which is huge, and then we've got our snowskate festival as well. And you know, with now the Brown Bear being closed and the Bent Elbow being closed, I'm trying to figure out where maybe if we do get larger crowds for these events, where we're gonna feed all these folks.
Well, and you're not counting the pickle barrel as well. And so, but what is the right answer? I agree with you that this can be done on an emergency ordinance basis rather than using it across the board, using the language that we've already got for the one that we're using in perpetuity. So that way you don't have people getting fined and having their privileges taken away who never have done anything wrong in the summertime and don't have, you know, there's no use of privileges in the summertime because you couldn't get your barricades out of the gutter in the middle of a massive snowstorm, or you didn't have the capacity or the help. So that's why I just think this is the total wrong way to skin this cat. If we want to do it for the month of February, then let's do a resolution or something off of the ordinance for the month of February. Because I don't think we've got much going on in March. So February is our winter timeframe. And as to your point, Jordan, it is about the individual businesses, whether or not they want to do it. I'm just saying, does everybody have the bandwidth to do this? Does every business owner in this community think that this is the right way to go? Because you're going to have to haul this frozen equipment that belongs to the town of Silverton into your private business. So that's what bothers me about it in the middle of winter.
And I just wanted to add, Jim had one more comment that he'd like me to, he put it in the chat and he said, I like the added capacity. I'm concerned about safety with regards to vehicular traffic and seasonal elements. Thanks.
What does the fire department have to say about this as well, considering, not that I want to ever see this again, but what happens if we had an incident like the Great Divide again in the middle of winter? So, or if we had an ambulance issue, just a couple more things. I mean, Tyler, you can address the ambulance issue part in reference to that.
I think we would be, I don't think it'd be too concerning. Like the one thing you brought up earlier is the ice is always an issue, but if people are walking in and out of restaurants or up and down the street, they're kind of dealing with it. I am a little more concerned with, I don't know, having a bunch of people in tight spaces in regards to this new variant of COVID, which is going around, which I think we could see, you know, maybe cases rise if we have really limited amounts of seating or limited amounts of room for big crowds. So there's that. And then I as far as the fire department, it probably would be good to check with them as far as what they can do to respond and if it's in the way. But yeah, obviously I can't speak to that, but yeah.
The idea that it's optional really resonates with me. But also Jim's safety concern, I think, takes the cake at the end of the day. I'm thinking about icy roads and people sitting in parking spots, potentially having large snowbanks in the middle of the road, limiting visibility when people are turning. I've seen people do like big swinging donuts in U-turns, and they would already be pretty committed before they realized that the parking spots they thought might be empty weren't. So I think that safety concern, like it could definitely work on sunny days when the snow's melted, like right now, where there's no snowbanks, but calling it's almost like we need to call it day to day. And then who wants the responsibility of making that determination that right now for this period it is safe, but at 11 a.m. it's supposed to start snowing, so maybe it's not safe this evening. It just seems that aspect of it, I feel like, just is too concerning. And I know like Durango had a traffic accident with their bump outs where a drunk driver, I think, ran into a group of people that were sitting in a bump out. And so adding visibility impairment plus icy roads, I think just maybe pushes it too far. And I hadn't really considered that before Jim made that comment. So that resonates with me. I'd be curious to know what Bruce thinks and what the chief thinks, and then how we could potentially work around that. Because I also agree with Tyler's point that giving people outside dining space to limit transmission of COVID is also a nice, important thing to accommodate for, but I don't know how to do all those things in a safe way.
So what if we didn't necessarily utilize it into the street so much? And what if we gave them, I don't know, a sidewalk right of way to help push people outside rather than pushing it into the street? Don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, just reaction to that, my initial thought is it's the same issue that we had with not using the sidewalks for the bump outs, where all of a sudden we take our pedestrian right of way and push it into the street, which probably creates the same type of safety concern, even though everybody's walking the street in winter anyway. But I'm definitely not the expert on that one. I'd be curious to know what our different safety experts think. John? And Sally,
I'd just
sorry,
like to add, I'd just like to add quickly that you all have brought up a lot of things about this proposal that definitely make me think a little bit harder about it. I think it's definitely doable, but I think in order to do it effectively with all the varying conditions, it's going to require a lot of oversight. And I'm not sure if that's something that we have the capacity for. Again, I agree. I'd like to hear what the sheriff and the chief have to say about it, but I think that a lot of the points that have been made definitely have me thinking about it in a different light. It's something that I see as a positive thing, that I would like to see something like this happen, but a lot of really good points to the contrary have been made, arguments, safety and practicality that I just wanted to thank you all for bringing them up.
Does someone want to start a delivery service that services Columbine Park and runs to all the runners to all the restaurants? A little food court that's off the street somewhere.
Instead of bringing in out barriers, you can start a new business with your extra time. Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what John Seitz just brought up too. Like, I'm supportive of this theoretically, and then thinking through it, I actually forgot about the berms in the middle because they're gone right now. But with the berms in the middle, it does restrict the street size pretty significantly for even parking. So it seems like it would work without the berms, but if the berms are there, and even without the berms, with an icy road, I can see the safety concerns. But I think the question of increasing outdoor capacity during these bulges of visitors and visitation, I'm not sure how to do that, but I would support trying to solve that problem as creatively as we can. Because I do think we're going to have so many visitors, and we're going to be trying to put our best foot forward as a community. And we want people to come and have a great experience here and hopefully not go home with COVID or bring a ton of COVID to our little community too. So I don't know. I'm not sure what that balance is, but.
Okay, well, you brought up some very good points there. So then what if the individual restaurants wanted to put up a tent on the street near ski joring where the road is already blocked off, to add additional seating, and you make it available with your own tables and chairs. And then you're not adding to something else. Does that make sense? Where you actually go and you have, like, I have a golden block tent, I could set it up out there, and then boom, it's done. Austin could do the same thing with a avalanche tent. Eureka could do the same thing. Kendall Mountain, anybody that wanted to participate to push people outside. And yeah, you could have a runner that would run it over there to patrons, something to that effect. Now that I'm for, because that comes down when the event is over and it's your personal equipment and you are responsible for it.
So similar but different. That made me think, what about targeting those busiest weekends? And what if we did something like we closed, half of 12th Street to service like a pavilion area for Golden Block and Avalanche together. And then, we cleared or did something similar for Eureka and Coal Bank, and trying to think what else is open. Kendall Mountain Cafe.
Kendall, the gas station, anybody that wanted to participate.
Like, what if we did kind of close rights of way to traffic that were adjacent to those businesses to enable those larger spaces without putting people on Green Street and Blair Street?
I think the only concern I would have with that would be the extension of the modification of the liquor license and how that would play into it. I would have to do a little bit of research to see the extension, or if anyone knows right now, if Molly, you might know about extending out that liquor license, or if we just didn't allow liquor to be served in that area.
Yeah, the way that the emergency statute read from the state of Colorado was that it had to be written in. You dropped off the location map, and then it became an extension by the town and the state. So drawing it on a side street, I don't know. I mean, do we have the ability, since we're our own liquor licensing authority, to extend that? I don't honestly know. But we weren't necessarily talking about liquor service. We were also talking about, because Kendall Mountain doesn't have a liquor license. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for liquor. I thought it was a safety concern for people to be eating outside. So not all food has to come with liquor.
Well, it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like we have more questions than we can answer in this moment, but that there's a handful of alternative ideas to float around, and maybe more brainstorming can be done, and maybe there isn't a solution, but if you guys come up with another one, should we push this to the next meeting? Or if, let's see, what's our calendar look like? It just need to be before that February 4th weekend.
And also, I think it does seem important to loop in the sheriff and the fire department.
So I'd say if you guys come up with like a super awesome idea that's iterative of this between now and the whiteout, let's reconvene. And if not, then we could talk about it again in our next meeting.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, I would like to draft something and look into closing off of one of those streets, and then present it all to you. So if that is a special meeting before the 4th, before our whiteout weekend, then perhaps we could do that. Jim just put in the chat, what about food court with tents at Harmony Park?
Yeah, and I guess we'd also just need to poll the different business owners to see who would find that as a benefit. Cool. Any other thoughts, ideas, concerns, questions before we move on to another topic?
Well, yeah, one directly related to this in reference to alcohol. Ski Joring is a 501c3, so there's no reason that if the businesses go in that they couldn't pull a event permit for what, $25 or $35, whatever it is, to actually have alcohol if we do close off that side street on 12th for just pedestrian traffic, and you allow the restaurants to set up tents where their patrons could take food. So just a thought for Ski Joring as well.
Okay,
And
so
I think
so I will
just
go
last,
back. Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
just lastly, I think this is a lot of good thoughts have been brought up, and I think this is something that we should continue to think about, because obviously we want to see, you know, these events do well and see a lot of folks come up. But I think we might continue to run into this, you know, with a lack of food service and capacity. So just thinking about it long term also, and maybe we can come up with an innovative solution that maybe will address this further down the road as well.
Okay, well,
The
staff
sake of
will
it-
be looking at that.
Cool. And for the sake of inclusivity, I think we forgot to mention Coffee Bear when talking about open businesses that may be interested in opting in.
Okay, and then Jim just said in the chat, I think this could be a good thing. Let's wrap our brains around it. Those are a great discussion tonight. I really appreciate everyone weighing in. That was from me, not Jim.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Next item on our, yeah.
One
Go
thing,
ahead.
Clayton, do we need to have a vote on this to vote it down on this ordinance?
Yeah, well, there needs to be some vote. Doesn't necessarily have to be a vote to put it down. You could table. Probably the better idea would be to table it if you don't think anybody can make a motion to vote for it or against it, or to table it.
Thank you.
And just so everybody's aware, there are ways to do this, but the emergency ordinance does require that any expansion that involves a liquor license be adjacent or contiguous with the business having the liquor license. There's other ways to do it. You can create a special district, et cetera, but those are a little bit more time consuming, but it's something to look forward to in the future. And then there's also, you know, like somebody mentioned, the special event permitting, which might be a way to do this, kind of parcel it out rather than have something that's just long standing. But there's definitely restrictions that are going to narrow your choices, and I'll do my best to kind of outline those as I'm asked.
Thank you very much, Clayton. So trustees, do we have a motion relating to the ordinance in front of us?
I would just say I'd prefer to table it until we can hear from the sheriff and the chief, just to have their point of view on things.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I can make a motion to table this ordinance 2022-01.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
He says yes.
Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
Trustee Bierma,
Yes.
Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman,
Yes.
unanimous to table.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for putting this in front of us. I think it's a good direction to be going and something helpful to think about. All right. Next item on our agenda tonight is consideration to approve the release of the RFP for an auditor.
So per the recommendation of the Finance Committee, we have drafted this RFP for your consideration to approve.
Thank you. Any questions about the memo or RFP or comments? Would anyone like to make a motion based on staff's recommendation in the memo?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to
Would you like to make a motion to approve releasing the RFP for
Yeah,
auditing
thank you.
services for fiscal year 2021?
so move. That's what I was looking for.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper. It's a visual yes.
He says yes.
Trustee Uyghur,
Yes.
Trustee Bierma,
Yes.
Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
yes.
Mayor Furman,
Yes,
unanimously yes.
thank you. All right, the next item is our public hearing relating to the application for a proposed subdivision preliminary / final plans, proposed Street Townhomes, Lot 5, Scarborough Moses re-subdivision, lots 13-215, Block 75, 5th and Street, Silverton, Colorado. And I believe we have some Zoom attendees that need to be promoted to panelists for this public hearing.
If I need to promote you to panelists, please raise your hand.
So I believe this one's Arthur Brown. Yep. Great. So since this is a public hearing, I think the way that we typically do this is we'll have staff kind of provide an overview of the substance, and then we will have the Arthur as the applicant have an opportunity to further present, and then we'll have a public comment period, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions as a board to staff and the applicant, and then we'll make a decision. Does that all sound good, Clayton?
Yes, yes, it does, Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so is that Clark or Lisa or Gloria that would like to provide a quick overview?
I can do that.
Wonderful.
This is a public hearing. We are reviewing the preliminary final plans for a proposed town subdivision. The site's at 5th and Reese, as you mentioned, and the name of the subdivision is Street Townhomes. The parcel is approximately 75 by 100 square feet. Approval tonight would cut that one parcel into 4 parcels. The building is under construction, designed as 4 townhomes. State statutes describe that a townhome is a residential unit accompanied by individually owned land. The applicants, Kirsten and Arthur Brown, are present to answer any questions. We contacted the adjacent landowners. We didn't receive any opposition, and a legal notice was placed in the newspaper. Since it's a public hearing, you should ask for any public comment and carefully consider any comment before making your decision. The Planning Commission and the Planning Department recommend approval with the 9 conditions of approval in the staff report. Also for your review tonight is a subdivision improvements and lien agreement and a fee in lieu agreement. I'd like to thank the applicant for putting together a good application and Clark Thornhill for his help on this. And I think if you have any questions, Kirsten or Arthur Brown might be able to answer those for you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Arthur, welcome. Would you like to provide further context, comment, or anything else related to what Lisa's just provided?
What's interesting, I can't, can you guys see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. I didn't know whether my camera was on or off. Hi, it's Kirsten, and Arthur's in the room too. And
Hi, Kirsten.
we don't have, hi, thank you all. We don't have much to add. Lisa and Clark did a really nice job working with us on preparing all the documentation. We only are requesting some edits to the subdivision improvements and lien agreement, just minor clarifications, which is located in my packet on page 55. And that's the only change we're looking for to come through this town board meeting with and approval. Do you guys need any more background than that on the process, on our townhouse development there?
I'm sorry, I didn't totally follow what the change on page 55 was.
Oh, okay. So on page 55 of your packet, there's a subdivision improvements and lien agreement. And we're requesting under item B1, just to better define an endpoint for what road widening that is being requested. It's been proposed to at least the center line, and we're requesting that we define when we're done widening the road across there on 5th Street. Just a defined endpoint, so we know that we're done and that we'll get our bond back. And so that's one of the edits that we're looking at. And the reason we're requesting that is it's that 5th Street looks deceptively small right now because we have dirt piled out onto town property. And once we remove that dirt and place a sidewalk, there's going to be more space there again. And we want to define an endpoint for when we're done widening that road. Do you guys want me to go through all the edits, or do you want to stop and talk about that one?
I just have a quick process clarification question. So this is a little bit new for us. All of the other applications that we've seen in the public hearing were not subject to further edit requests. And I just, from a process perspective, I'm curious if it would be appropriate for us to add the acceptance or rejection or further clarification of these edits in a conditional approval, if that's the direction the board ended up going, or how do we manage the request for edits in an application during a public hearing, if not that?
I would defer to Clayton on this one.
Okay, so I had not been a part of this leading up until this point. Mayor Furman's correct. Typically, this is not probably the best practices sort of process for this. Some of the conditions, as I look through this, are significant, and they are going to depend on further approval by the Planning Commission. And then, so basically the Board of Trustees at this point is approving approving what you're looking at with these conditions, and then kind of delegating the authority back to the planning commission to be sure that the conditions are met. You know, these are some of these are pretty significant requirements in statute. The most significant that I see being the storm drainage issue. And, you know, it's not typical to get to this point in the process with so many things still up in the air. And, you know, discussing edits of, you know, meeting of the minds on certain requirements, you know, usually would happen in kind of like the sketch phase plan and pre-development process, and not necessarily at the public hearing for a development. That said, it's not a very large development, and I think the board can be creative with it if you feel comfortable with it. And I know you have a strong leadership and you know, knowledge and expertise with the planning commission and planning department. So you really can kind of go either way. But this is atypical. So I see your issue, Mayor Furman, and you know, you guys are just gonna have to discuss kind of how you want to handle it. A lot of this stuff probably should have been dealt with before we know we got to the public hearing, but we're here at the public hearing, and so you know, you kind of either move forward or decide to kind of table it and re-notify it and make sure some of these things are kind of sketched out a little better before it comes back to you for approval.
Kirsten. Thank you, Clayton.
You know, I don't know how to address the edits part. This was an option put forth by the planning department to come in and do the edits in the town board session. But I understand what you guys are saying, and that would be atypical. And so we would be comfortable working with the planning department and John Seitz, which I forget what his group is, he works with right now, but we'd be comfortable keeping a lot of this as is. There's just minor cleanup. We don't have to work on the edits in this town board session right now.
I mean, it's quite possible the edits are better for all parties. It's not necessarily a negotiation thing. It could, you know, typo edits are great to catch no matter what. I just wanted to ask for a little bit of additional direction on how we should manage the edits, which I think Clayton provided. And we'll probably kick that question back to Lisa and John before we finish this conversation tonight. So I'm comfortable if you'd like to continue presenting aspects of this proposal that you want to bring to our attention to keep going. But I appreciate everybody taking that pause to go through that process point.
Right, and let me clarify something. I'm not trying to move the board in either direction. The purpose here, of course, in this public hearing is that it's, you know, it's a quasi judicial function of the board, and you just have to, you know, I think it's okay to make certain edits and come to a meeting of the minds with your applicant as the decision maker. But the one thing I would caution against is delegating any sort of like edits to be discussed off, you know, outside of the public hearing at this point, because then you're undermining the purpose of the public notice and the purpose of the public hearing. And so, you know, I think you're kind of stuck at this point, either kind of adopting it as is, or at least discussing what edits they are. And if they are substantive, you know, major substantive edit, and you're looking at, you know, possibly having to re-notify this, because that could change a public, you know, the public's perception. You can't change, you know, you've noticed this, you can't really make any major substantive changes without kind of undermining the entire process. And so that's what would be my major concern. The edits that were being discussed so far really just sounded like clarifying certain issues. by adding a little detail. And I don't think that's necessarily a substantive change. If we're talking about widening the road, you know, as long as it doesn't change those neighboring properties, property rights or perspectives on what the actual build out is, then I think it might be okay. But you know, you're kind of riding a gray area.
So just so that the board understands and I understand, because these edits were reflected in the application that was publicly noticed, are you saying that we have to accept the edits or are potentially?
No, I think. Well, so no, there. So let's talk. I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So you have these conditions, and that's fine. You can accept the planning with the contingencies. There are a couple pretty major contingencies, and I would say that, you know, this project is far from vetted because, you know, some of these are pretty major requirements, and there's nothing to say that that the planning commission has to accept whatever the storm drainage system is, you know, that the applicant puts forward. As far as the discussion of the clarifications, you know, now you're talking a little bit. Now you're kind of getting into that area where the public process is being undermined. The notification and the point of the public hearing is for somebody to review this, be able to come in and say, you know, I disagree with this development. I don't like it because this, and this. Planning Commission's job is to tell you as a board, does this meet your building code requirements? And you know, they've done that, and then but they've also said, but then there's these other areas that haven't been met, and so it's just kind of an awkward position for everyone. I recognize, because, you know, the applicant has obviously put in a ton of work, and this is, you know, putting in a subdivision is no small task. But there's some pretty major pieces that have not been determined yet, and so it seems a little, you know, like you're almost being forced into this preliminary decision without all the information. So it's just a really kind of a weird situation, to be honest. So, you know, and so as per your question about the edits, just be careful about changing the scope of this project without having given proper notice and allowing people to come in and make comments on what they saw and read. So if you change this, then it's no longer the same, possibly same type of development. And so that really just depends circumstantially on what those particular edits are and what the discussion is. And so that's, you know, kind of why I jumped in and wanted to say something, because you can, you know, you can go outside of your boundary pretty quick here and undermine the point of the public hearing.
Gotcha. And then moving back to the public hearing itself, whatever the board's conclusion is relating to this kind of gray area, we should still see through the whole process where Kirsten and Arthur get to continue presenting everything they'd like to, then move to public comment, then discussion, where we can further clarify the direction that we want to go based on these things that you've raised for us. Is that correct?
That's a great way to do it, because, you know, nobody knows better than, is it the Browns? I apologize. I don't think anybody knows better than the applicant what they're trying to do. And of course, they've been working a lot with the planning division, and they have this, you know, pretty in-depth development that, you know, you guys do need to consider with an open mind. And then, you know, the public, of course, has their opportunity to make public comment, which you also need to consider with open mind. Then you can have your discussion and make a decision. So I think that's a great order of events.
Awesome. All right, thank you. All right, Kirsten and Arthur, back to you.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have requested any edits had I known that it would create a stir. It was just an option that was presented to me that's the way I should proceed with this. And these minor clarifications about the center line, it's already indicating that probably the center line of the road is the end point. And so I don't think that is a substantive change. And then some of it's just typos. to this agreement. So I don't think that requesting anything substantive as a change to this lien agreement. We have gone down the path of selling 3 of the units. We have contracts on 3 of the units, of which we've purposely not listed until the last unit to try to get locals to purchase them. And what we have secured for this is that there's 3 full-time families that are moving into these units and purchasing them within the next 3 to 4 weeks because completion is ending. We're ready to work on the subdivision improvements. Frankly, we would have put in the sidewalk, which we thought was the only major part that we needed to do, but we were encouraged to hold back on the sidewalk until we could come up with a little better plan. And so we asked our builder to hold off on the sidewalk. And so hence that is how the major impetus behind the lien agreement was to deal with the sidewalk and some of those remaining issues. So we'd like to propose that we continue to move forward and sell these townhouses and move these families. Some of them are moving to town and some of them already live in town and are purchasing.
Thank you. Any other, yeah, Lisa?
We made some changes to the subdivision improvements and lien agreement that were discussed with the planning commission. Originally, we had all 4 unit owners that were going to be co-signers on the improvements agreement. And we removed those. So we did most of the edits that the applicant requested, and we would not recommend any further edits. There's multiple reasons for the proposed road widening, and only a minor one is the snow. What we proposed is that the plans could have shown the public improvements better than they did. But being that the area is so flat and the subdivision's relatively minor and the grading and drainage is relatively minor, excuse me, in some cases an inch or 2 of grading. What we proposed was that the applicant will work with staff on it. And normally that all would have been shown better on the plans. At the same time, the amount of public improvements is pretty minor, and staff has put a lot of work into figuring out what that is. There's a little bit of uncomfortableness on the part of the applicant to trust the staff to know when the public improvements will be done. What I did add in here to the subdivision improvements and lien agreement is that in the hopes of if there were to be any issue, instead of just saying when the public works director or town staff says that's the grading's done, I wrote in here, if there happens to be any discrepancy or issue, that we would come to the town board and discuss it with the town board, and the town board would be able to help us make a decision. If there's further edits that the applicant would need to feel comfortable with this, then I would recommend that the plans would need to be improved and that this would need to be tabled. So in order for this to be approved tonight, which I feel comfortable with, the applicant would have to work with staff and trust staff to know what parts need 2 inches of grading and what parts need 3 inches of grading. And so I would recommend approval, but I would not recommend any further changes to the subdivision improvements and lien agreement.
Thank you, Lisa. And Kirsten, you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with no edits. And I'm more than comfortable working with the town staff that I've worked with so far. Everyone has been very helpful and not a lot of concern, just you know, thought I could seek clarification, and I think we can do it in other ways and work together.
Thank you. All right, anything else from staff or Kirsten or Arthur before we open up public comment? Okay, great. So at this time, we'll open up public comment. Please click the raise hand button and we will enable you to talk. It doesn't appear that we have any public comment this evening, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. And we will move to the discussion component of this public hearing with trustees, staff, and applicant. So trustees, what sort of question, comments, concerns might you have? And maybe we could even defer to Jess and Jim to kick it off as planning commission members to provide additional insight. And I guess that's probably going to fall on you, Jess, since Jim's audio is limited.
I'm happy to support the suggestions that we've heard from our planning director. I think the edit part has got us all a little confused right now, so I'd like to propose we just get rid of those edits, as the applicant has said that they're okay with. This was mostly just an effort to get more housing on the market and make these units more saleable. And so, you know, I think the applicant's been working through all this. The application seems very complete, you know, but interested to hear what other trustees have to say.
Thank you, Jess. I just had two quick questions. The first is, what is the consequence of, so the 9th condition is violation of these conditions of approval may cause the approval of the subdivision application to be voided. So I'm curious what the consequence is of the subdivision application being voided in the future if there's an issue with one of these conditions that, as Clayton said, are somewhat material. Does that create problems or defaults with the sales, or is it just an issue of a future transfer of title and needing to coordinate with the other residents in the building if it isn't fully subdivided? Kirsten?
Well, if the question is in regards to the subdivision lien agreement, then the path towards rectification or seeking a process would be to keep the bond. If it has to do with any other part, then I don't know the answer.
Got it. Okay. And then my second question is, does this in any way supersede the earlier conditions that we put on the approvals? For example, where we said only one of these units could be allowable for a short-term rental and 3 had to be long-term. Is that still in place post subdivision?
Yes, those would still apply. And also vacation rentals have to have a certain number of feet between them. And so only one unit on this project site would be eligible. And that particular zone already has maxed out on the cap on vacation rentals. And also, I think the applicant put something into the CC&Rs about vacation rental as well. So yeah, all those previous rezoning, we did a rezoning about a year ago, March, we rezoned the property, and that was rezoned to R2. And then you looked at the outline development plan for subdivision in October. All the previous requirements still do apply. And a lot of them were somewhat redundant, like the vacation rental one. We were already covered by the vacation rental ordinance anyway.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, and I think so. We voted to approve this as long as those conditions were met. And reading through the packet earlier, if we just sort of ignore the edits, which threw me off a little bit as well, the Planning Commission gave this their full support and approval, and the need for more residential housing we all agreed on, I think, when we initially reviewed this project. And so I'm pretty happy to approve this and make sure this continues to go forward, especially seeing how far they've gotten with it already. And we're, they're sort of at this, critical point. I'd like to see us continue to support them, and as long as we're not breaking any process rules, and we've allowed for public comment, and it seems like we're doing everything by the book. And since the Planning Commission has supported it and we previously supported it, I'd like to continue and make sure we can continue to support these folks.
Much agreed, Tyler.
And I'm just gonna jump in real quick. I did not mean to confuse the board at all, and I know kind of maybe how I explained it wasn't great. My major concern is just really trying to make sure that you all understood that the negotiation process was over, and that this wasn't the time to do it. I didn't again, this is a very incredibly well put together plan. It looks great. You guys have all the right liability coverages in place. It's bonded for the public improvement, so you have leverage there. I think it's a great project for the town. You're building in long-term rental or sale properties. Everything looks great, and I understand the focus and the mission for that. And I didn't want to try to dissuade anyone. I just didn't want the town to. I didn't want the board to engage in negotiations during the public hearing on any critical or substantive changes, and that's not what's happened here. So I don't think the board should have any trepidations in approving it if that's what they wanted to do. Of course, you still have the option to do whatever you want. I just wanted to clarify why I said what I said when I said it.
Yeah, thank you too. I like making sure that everything's done by the book and making sure that we're doing all the processes properly. But yeah, I think I was also thrown off by those edits, but after we discussed it, and I think we can move forward if we can work with the town and per Lisa's suggestions. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
I agree with Clayton. I've seen the county commissioners kick things back to the planning commission when changes are made that are significant enough to warrant. And I would mention that we made all the changes we thought were appropriate already to the subdivision improvements agreement. And that's why we were recommending that you conditionally approve it as presented without further edits.
Thank you. Gloria?
I just wanted to read Jim's comment in the chat. Jim says, I'm in full support of Director Lisa and her opinions. Brown has worked well with both the director and staff. This is a great project for our town. This will benefit our community long term. I support this. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Any other trustees have questions that they haven't voiced yet? Any further discussion on this before we consider a direction? All right. Would a trustee like to propose a motion?
Well, let me find it really quick. I have such a hard time with Google Docs. I get black pages.
It's on page 20 of our meeting packet.
Yes. I'm almost there. Just want to word it right.
I suppose I'll take this gap as an opportunity to say I appreciate everybody bearing with me on the process stuff. I want to make sure we got this right. And I also support this project. I'm excited to see it happen. And so Kirsten and Arthur, thank you very much for your patience in this process.
Oh my goodness.
I've got it, I think, right here.
Okay, if you can get it to me faster, go for it.
I'll make a motion to approve the combined preliminary and final plat application for Reed Street Townhome subdivisions with the listed in the staff report.
I will second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper. That's a visual yes. Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
It is unanimous yes across the board.
Well, Kirsten and Arthur, thank you very much. And congratulations.
Yes, thank you all, and especially Lisa and Clark. Thanks.
All right. We will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our last new business item, which was originally scheduled for 7:30, which is a public hearing for the avalanche hazard development permit use subject to review application, proposed AT&T generator and propane tank lots 19 through 22, block 95, 347 Cement Street, Silverton, Colorado. And my humor was not meant negatively at all. I apologize if that
I will
came
let
across that way.
Lisa
I just
lead
thought it was
this one
funny.
in.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Gloria.
Yes, this is a 7:30 or after public hearing. The applicant is AT&T. The applicant is actually representing AT&T. They'd like to put in a telecommunications backup generator and propane tank adjacent to the existing cell phone tower, which is located on block 95. And the landowner happens to be the town of Silverton. A portion of the parcel is within the town's adopted avalanche hazard overlay district. Therefore, this proposal requires a use subject to review application. In the avalanche zone, propane tanks are required to be buried. And so that we have suggested, and the planning commission agreed, that we think the propane tank should be buried. Since the town is the landowner, that does bring up a side issue of if the tank were ever to leak, then we get into an issue with the EPA. So the planning department and planning commission has recommended that AT&T write us an agreement stating that they would take any responsibility for any unexpected leaking underground propane tank. This is a pretty standard sized propane tank, by the way. It's not extremely large. We would need that turned in from the applicant, and then we would have our town attorney look at that to make sure it's adequate. We don't want to put it on staff or the attorney to have to prepare that. The site is currently leased to American Tower Management, and AT&T is a subletter, or it's a sublease. There's a electromagnetic buffer zone around this cell phone tower. Initially, I started looking into whether or not we should keep adding stuff out there as it makes a lot of the surrounding town-owned land unusable for potential housing and other things. But after I realized how much is already down there and the fact that the lease appears to have been extended through 2050, I don't think a generator and a small propane tank are going to make much difference. We are recommending tie-down straps on the proposed generator. And the applicant mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting, which we had not heard before, that this is a federally mandated project, so that AT&T would have service or redundancy in the event of a power outage. There were not a whole lot of adjacent landowners, but one happens to be Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. And I did get a call right before the Planning Commission meeting from Jeff Johnson at the train. And he was just curious, where this might be located and if it might be close to their tracks or potentially within the right of way. And I've been communicating with generally Frank and Nick and Nisi to give them a copy of the packet so that they can look for themselves at Block 95 in relation to the train tracks. The closest train tracks that I have noticed is about 230 feet away from the proposed improvements. I do not think that's within the trains right away, but I'm an engineer and planner. I'm not an attorney or a railroad expert. I did invite Nick, Frank, Anisi, and Jeff Johnson to attend this hearing. They may be in the Zoom meeting and may wish to comment at some point. The applicant's name is Kim Stratton Wood, and she was asked or encouraged to attend. And if she's present on Zoom, you may want to promote her as panelist. The Planning Commission and the Planning Department is recommending conditional approval with the conditions of approval that are listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Lisa. It doesn't appear that unless Fire Tablet listed as an attendee is the applicant or Frank or Nick Anisi, it doesn't look like any of the people you mentioned are participating in the Zoom meeting tonight. So unless there's further comment by staff, I think we'd move to our public comment period. Anything else from Lisa, Gloria, or Clark? Okay, so at this point, we'll open our public comment period for this public hearing. On the Zoom meeting, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelists to speak. It appears that we do not have public comment this evening, so we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to the discussion component of this.
Yeah, I have a question maybe Lisa can address for us. So I was reading in the packet that cell tower is sublet out to at least 3 other service providers. If it's federally mandated, what are they doing for their backup power?
I noticed in the staff report. So I'd like to thank Clark Thornhill for putting the staff report together, and then I helped him. And I'd like to thank you guys for getting Clark Thornhill on board. I noticed that Clark said in the report, which I asked him to clarify for me, I believe he wrote, once AT&T puts this in, everyone that's present at the site will have backup. And I asked him to explain that to me. Maybe he could answer your question better. I think this would be the last critical piece, but I would need to check that with Clark.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I I personally have T-Mobile and Verizon services, and I've seen them work during an outage. So I just have heard anecdotally just through town that AT&T does not have service during a power outage. Otherwise, I went down to the site, and unless someone here knows someone from T-Mobile or Verizon, I can't see into their equipment shelters or really know what they're doing, but I don't see any other propane tanks or generators on site. They could be using batteries or something else.
Thank you.
I guess Evan, just real quick process question again. For Jim. Jim, do you feel that the question raised by the train in any way affects your ability to participate in this, or do you feel clear to be part of this discussion? Which is slightly ironic because I know that your ability to communicate right now is significantly curtailed. Thank you. In the text, Jim, for the record, Jim wrote, and I'm not sure if when it says everyone, if that means everyone, and I'm assuming that on YouTube they can't see our text. But Jim wrote, I'm voting for this, thumbs up. And he also mentioned, in clarification to Clark's comment, 4 to 6 hour battery backup system. Thanks, Jim. Molly has her hand up.
I'm just happy to see that we are moving in the right direction with redundancies. We've had massive issues before. So propane's buried. As long as they follow everything that it says, I'm very happy to send my blessing with this as well.
Thank you. Other trustee comments or questions?
Have we received feedback from them about whether they're going to be able to bury a propane tank, or have you sent the conditions to them? I didn't see any response from them regarding the
I've been working with Kim Stratton Wood for about 2 years, and she's well aware that we want the engineer to bury the tank. And the main reason that we did that was to comply with the code that the town adopted in 2005 that clearly requires propane tanks and avalanche zones to be buried. And to not have AT&T bury it would be unfair or precedent. I guess you would want to do it as a variance. I did know, I was a little bit concerned, since the town's the landowner, if there was a leaking tank, the EPA goes after the town. But I did notice that the town, that the EPA now requires basically like a huge concrete encasement under any new buried tanks. The other thing I was planning to do is, if this application is acceptable to you, I was actually going to reach out to the actual engineer that stamped the plans to talk to him to make sure that he gets a copy of the paperwork so that he knows if there's things on his plans he needs to change and restamp.
Thank you.
Great thinking, Lisa.
Any other comments or discussion? So Jim has a question for Lisa. Do we have a map of where the actual tank and generator will be located?
Yes, that is in the packet, in the plans. They actually submitted very nice looking engineered stamped plans. And a full set of plans. And there is a site plan in here, and the location's on block 95. And basically you drive along the train tracks down 5th Street, and then you turn and go another block and a half down Mineral. And there's a couple horses down there in a corral, and the cell phone tower's down there, and it's a fenced enclosure, and it's buzzing loudly. You really can't miss it. But it's within that fenced enclosure. AT&T has a little corner of the fenced enclosure. It would be located what people here in Silverton would call the southeast corner of the fenced enclosure. The closure would be closest to the highway. The corner would be closest to the highway, I guess you could say. So I think that would be lot 19. And I measured it out for the Anisis so that I would know how far it might be from the train tracks. It looks like 220 to 230 feet from the closest tracks.
Thank you. Sally?
Okay, so I might have missed this in the packet, but it is on town property, so we receive a rent for this from AT&T, I think, and there's a letter about the monthly amount versus a lump sum. Is that something we need to discuss as a part of this, or is that something separate or settled?
I found some assistance from actually Todd, found some old emails. It looks to me like in a few years ago that the lease was extended through 2015. And it looks like American Tower Management pays about 600 something a month to the town through 2051. And then it sort of looked to me like I'm more concerned about the permanent construction than dollar sign stuff, but it actually looks like the subletter AT&T might be paying double that to American Tower Management, maybe 1,000 or something a month I noticed in there. So unfortunately, it sounds like it's a price that the town has locked themselves into. And then there was also a strange letter written to John Ryder. It was right when COVID hit. And it said, we want to talk to you as our landlord because we might want to move the cell phone tower. And I put those in there because I thought they were very interesting for all of us to consider and look into, but they're somewhat a side note to the proposal in front of us tonight, that we're taking it as at face value as presented. Avalanche hazard development permit, use subject to review application for a relatively simple generator and tank in an avalanche zone, which does seem to be a reasonable proposal from the applicant, and the application meets the basic requirements and has the planning commission's nod of approval as well. So those are side notes. It looks like we're sort of boxed into a corner given the amount of equipment down there and our reliability on it. But the thing that made me a little upset about it was that it's basically, unfortunately, somewhat condemned what little town land we have that maybe we could have used for housing is now in an electromagnetic buffer zone. However, the proposal before you tonight, I recommend conditional approval of.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, or would a trustee like to make a motion? Does anyone have concerns about this? Is that a hold up on the motion, or are we just playing a little poker game here?
I'm happy to make a motion. I'm trying to find the page in the packet.
It is page 67 of the PDF.
I'll make a motion to approve the AT&T backup generator and propane tank.
No,
Hold on,
if
sorry.
that's the motion you'd like to make, absolutely. That's your
With
prerogative. It's not.
conditions. I see it down here.
Okay.
Okay, I will make a motion to conditionally approve the avalanche hazard development permit application with AT&T. Does that work?
Almost. I mean, if that's the motion you'd like to make, that's the motion you'd like to make. That's not quite what the staff report recommends.
Got it. I'm down one. I'm up one from it. Conditional approval of the propane tank shall be installed below grade. Is that what you think?
So there's
Motion to
a,
approve this
it
avalanche
says
hazard
proposed
development
motion. It says
permit
proposed motion to consider, and then there's like a quote on
Yeah, I
page
got
6
it.
of 7 of the staff report.
6. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve this avalanche hazard development permit application by AT&T at the cell tower site with the conditions listed in the staff report. Apologies.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Varela,
Yes.
Trustee Harper. It's a yes in the chat. Trustee Uyghur,
Yes.
Trustee Bierma, Trustee Bierma,
Yes.
Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
That is unanimous across the board.
Thank you. All right. So that concludes our second public hearing of the evening, and we will move along to the consent agenda. Is there anything in there that needs to be pulled out, or would a trustee like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Sorry, I was muted. Trustee Varela,
Yes.
Trustee Harper. That's a yes in the chat. Trustee Uyghur,
Yes.
Trustee Bierma,
Yes.
Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
That's unanimous yes across the board.
Thank you. So we'll move on now to staff reports.
I will make this quick since I know that we are getting a little late in our meetings. I just wanted to update you on Southern Ute Tribe and my unsuccessfulness on getting a hold of anyone at this point, but I have some leads starting today. So hopefully we'll have something to you by our next meeting. Community Builders Compass Project held their first webinar learning series on January 18th. We had over 40 attendees from across the community, and we discussed strengthening our local economy. So as a reminder, the Compass Project has morphed into creating a master plan for our community. And these webinar series are informational as well as an opportunity to be heard. The next webinar will be Tuesday, February 1st at 5 p.m. and the topic will be on responsible growth and development. If you haven't participated yet, this is your chance to do so. This is the master plan is a guiding policy document that will inform our policy decisions for the next 10 years. So just kind of wanted to put that plug in there. Also met with Todd. Todd and I did a facility stakeholders group for all of our people that help us out at the facilities and run the facilities that we have. And we have a new maintenance form, so the public can access this as well on our website. So if you see something that might need to be fixed up at a facility, you can fill out our maintenance form. As well, I also have an ethics update looking into Clayton. I've put a lot on his plate in this month, getting him on here. And so we are now working on a draft legislation regarding ethics to incorporate into our municipal code. And then in those discussions, Clayton identified that he has an hour presentation on best practices that he would like to present on the trustees. So I would recommend that we bring that to you all, hopefully by the next board meeting, and then request a work session on ethics and best practices as kind of the educational component to that ordinance being proposed. And then I would like to request a housing work session on potentially Monday, February 21st with CHAFA. That was one of the dates that they had given me, and this would be with the consultants that are doing the renderings for our Anvil townhome. So it would be 10 townhomes, as well as the second phase of that is a condo complex. So
quick question before you move forward.
Sure.
Since February 21st is a holiday, President's Day, would that still be a viable option?
Yeah, that's the date they gave me. I might have to go back to them and double check. I don't know if they realized that when they gave me the dates.
I don't think we should schedule around me specifically, but I'd really love to be able to attend that. But I will be off the grid from the 14th to the 24th, which I know is a long window, so you may not be able to work around my schedule.
Okay. I will get back with them and then coordinate a housing work session via email, and then announce that at our next meeting if that works for you all. So those are my quick updates, and then Matt has a quick update as well on elections.
Yep. So great news. We have 4 packets that have been filled out and returned. So we do have a full election going with 4 candidates, and there's 3 seats. Each seat is a 4-year term, so there's no short terms to worry about in this election. I had to double check and make sure on that one. And then notable dates, January 31st is the deadline to have a affidavits as a writing candidate. So even though you've missed, if you haven't gotten on the ballot yet, you can still get on the write-in ballots, or you can be a writing candidate if you submit a affidavits by the 31st. That's basically just a notarized writing that you stating that you want to be considered as a write-in candidate. Also on the 31st, that is the deadline for anybody who wants to withdraw, who has already accepted a nomination, or accepted a affidavits for nomination rather. So if you turn in your packets and you're getting cold feet, you've got until the 31st to withdraw. And then from there, no big election deadlines after that for a good few weeks, aside from things on the back end. Things I got to do for like voter lists, getting things ready, just more admin stuff, nothing that candidates or electors need to worry about. And any questions?
Thank you, Matt. And then
Thank you
Todd
for
had
that
a
update.
quick, oh, sorry, Shane.
Oh, I just was saying thank you.
And then Todd had a quick update on Kendall.
I will try and be brief as well. I just wanted to give a real quick update. The last 2 weekends, we've had issues with the chairlift. We've been able to work through those. So currently the chairlift is running and functioning correctly. Big thanks to Chris Higgins. He really, it's incredible what he does over there and his knowledge. So we're happy to say things are going well with the chairlift. Skating rink, we've been making really rapid progress recently. We've had some various setbacks, whether it be 50 or 60 inches of snow or a burst pipe and not being able to run the hoses or the lift station being out. But I think we are just 1 or 2 applications of water away from that finally being open. I can't thank the community enough for their patience in that regard. Just kind of understanding that we've been a little short-staffed. We are currently fully staffed finally, so that's exciting as well. So skating rink and chairlift are both going very well. And our current plan is to torque test skis and have rentals available starting Friday, which would mean at that point we are fully staffed and return to full services. It has been a challenging fall and winter, but we're excited to finally, like I said, be fully staffed and just have those services where they should be. And we thank the community for their patience as we kind of work through it all. Happy to answer any questions if there are any. Otherwise, we can just proceed.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions from trustees on staff reports or what Todd was just speaking about for Kendall? Cool. Back to you, Gloria.
That is all I have on staff reports, and we didn't have any committees meeting within that time, so I didn't put in, I know they had left the committee reports on there, but we didn't have any committees meet.
Got it. All right. So then we will move along to trustee reports. I just have a quick 2-hour presentation to provide. No, I'm just kidding. Anything trustees would like to say? Nope. Then we move along to continued business. 9A, review compost survey results.
Sure. So on the September 13th regular meeting, the town was presented with a proposal from Table to Farm Composting to provide composting pickup services to the town residents. The trustees directed town staff to conduct a survey to determine the interest of the community. You will find the results in your packet. Just a quick synopsis of those results. We've received 31 responses, with the general consensus being the community likes composting, but would like to find a way that the town can provide this on their own. The agenda memo also outlines those responses. In thinking about this, I would like to request that the staff research what it would take to have our own compost facility and present that to the trustees with the cost comparison to that of the current Table to Farm compost proposal. And I have talked to Table to Farm. They're aware of the survey results and the staff recommendation and is patient with our process.
Great, thank you. Any trustee comments or questions on compost survey results? Okay, thank you, Gloria, for keeping us updated. We will move on to 9B, ski joring addendum.
And I'm going to turn this one over to Todd.
Pretty straightforward. Basically, the intention here was to demonstrate that the ski joring board is listening to the trustees, and I think through the collaboration of the ski joring board, we tried to address the major concerns. Happy to answer any questions. Pretty straightforward. What you see is what the ski joring board would like to add to the contract, just to kind of better define roles and responsibilities and expectations.
Trustees, any questions or comments on the addendum? It sounds like Karen stepped up and did quite a bit of work.
One quick question.
I just want to say thank you to Karen for also just carrying, some additional community weight there. Molly, go ahead. Sorry. Molly? Oh, I think you're muted.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is whether these are points, since this is a multi-year contract, this wouldn't be things that would be year over year. Does that make sense? Because the next contract isn't going to read that we need a new promo clip for 2023, right? Because this is a year over year contract.
That makes sense, Todd? Or do you want to clarify anything? With this addendum specific to the 2022 season?
Yeah, I had a bit of trouble hearing. The connection wasn't perfectly stable, but I think it was just wanting to clarify that the items that are specific to this year will not roll over due to it being a multi-year contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's why I was asking if they necessarily need to be contractual or if it's just a good update for the board since we have a multi-year contract.
Sure. And I may have to clarify some of those answers with Karen. For example, the promotional footage will have this year's dates in it if the town would prefer to have something that can only be used once. And they'd rather have it be something broad without those specific dates. I may need a little bit of additional clarification.
Yeah, and so I'm just reading that addendum. The says that the ski touring clip that they made will be used to promote 2022 ski touring, which makes sense just for this year. But like the extra $5,000 just for the purse, that's just, it said just an addendum. So will that be for next year as well, or is that was just a one-time addition also? So just to make sure that all of those are for this year's ski touring, not for the rest of the contract.
Is this something we can defer to Clayton on in terms of whether this is a side letter or an addendum or what the format is that properly incorporates the 2022 specific things relative to the more overarching things?
Mayor Furman, do you want me to answer that?
I mean, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's up to you guys. I mean, if everybody can come together on the terms, whether you redraft the contract, make it an addendum, or whatever the other vehicles are to make that happen, I think you can decide how you want to do it. I think an addendum to an existing contract is a really good idea unless you're doing a major overhaul to the major terms and conditions of that contract. And if you wanted to add an addendum with certain requirements, it's certainly within your purview to do as a board. Of course, the applicant would have to agree to them as well.
Got it. Thank you very much. Molly and then Todd, or Todd and then Molly, whatever you guys think.
Well, it's just one of the major ones would be the footage. The short promo clip, whatever, wouldn't we all want to continually use this going forward? That was the whole purpose of the money to begin with. I don't know. That's just thoughts on that. And yeah, and if we make it an addendum, I'm fine that everything says 2022, that these items were only specific for 2022. But I think the item about the clip should be, I mean, I would hope ski touring, for all the money that was invested in the time, would want to use it continually, not just 1 year. So would that be something that the town of Silverton would also be able to use to promote the community and the event in additional footage or additional promotions?
Todd?
I was just going to suggest it would be pretty simple to sort out what was 2022 specific and what was multi-year in the actual writing of the addendum. So we could just break those kind of each item out individually. As far as a promotional clip, I think it would really just require direction. If you wanted something a little more general that could be used every year, kind of seems like a minor task, but I don't think we have a video editor that would just kind of make one of these each year and change the dates. So my recommendation would probably be to get something that doesn't have the specific dates in it. And then it would be a pretty easy edit to do in-house to just change those dates each year for a promo piece. But I don't think we'll get
back to that point is that most all the promotional material that was ever printed previous years just said President's Day weekend, and it never had a date on it, because then it wasn't specific, and then it could be utilized constantly, and you never had to reprint or constantly preprint date.
I think that would be relatively easy to do, and just make that minor modification before it's sent over to the town for promotional purposes and distribution.
So are the trustees generally in favor of giving the direction that the addendum's great with a little bit of additional clarification? Primarily around a few of the items being generally not specific to 2022 and a bunch of them being specific to 2022. Todd, do you think you need any further clarification or direction from the board?
I think we've got it, and I'll make sure Karen is aware of the requested changes. They're all pretty minor. I think they should be pretty easy to implement.
Okay, great. Anything else on this topic? All right. Thank you, Todd. We will now go to our closing public comment. And I do see a hand raise on Zoom. Click raise hand and we'll promote you to panelist. You have 3 minutes, and please introduce yourself at the beginning of the public comment.
Hey, this is Melody. Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Melody.
I don't know if you've seen this, but I wanted to point this out. The Federal Highway Administration is going to get like $26 billion to help states with bridges. And Colorado is going to receive $225 million to improve the conditions of 481 bridges listed in poor condition. And guess what? The one over Cement Creek on Green Street is on the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
Well, between that and Gloria getting that traffic study from CETA, we like in the win now.
All right, I don't see any other public comment at this time, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. It's been one of our longer meetings last few months, so thank you all for bearing with us. I think it was super productive and some great presentations and discussions. The time is 10:11 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the night.
Thank you, trustees. All right, Matt, I'm gonna go hit stop record on that other computer and hopefully we're good. Thanks.